A blaze of secrets and betrayals in Port Charles. The calm that briefly settled over Port Charles shattered in a single breath as crisis rippled through the town, pulling everyone into a maelstrom of fear, suspicion, and painful revelations. As the city stirred on a seemingly quiet Tuesday, tragedy struck without mercy, igniting long-dormant tensions and laying bare the fragility of the lives tangled in its web. For Sunny, Alexis, Molly, and Christina, the day unfolded like a relentless trial, testing not only their emotional strength but also their ability to endure betrayal from every direction. The chaos began when Alexis, embroiled in a heated confrontation at Windermere with the ever-elusive Jen Sidwell, found herself torn between legal obligation and maternal instinct. Her disagreement with Sidwell over legal documentation hinted at deeper tensions, ones that had little to do with contracts and everything to do with trust, manipulation, and buried motives. Though Sidwell cloaked himself in cold detachment, Alexis could sense the undercurrents of something more dangerous brewing beneath his calm exterior. The moment her phone lit up with a call that would twist her insides, the world around her tilted sharply. News had broken. Charlie's pub, a place so close to the Davis family, had gone up in flames, and Christina had been inside. As Alexis bolted from Windermere, her mind reeled with the worst-case scenario. The image of Sidwell, still standing in the shadows of the castle, refusing to meet her eyes, haunted her. Could he have orchestrated the fire? Could he have placed Christina, her fierce and vulnerable daughter, directly in harm's way? Rage clawed at her throat, but it was fear that gripped her heart. The desperate prayer that Christina had somehow escaped in time pushed her past panic, into a frenzy of resolve. Meanwhile, across town at the Quartermain mansion, Cody delivered the harrowing news to Molly and Sasha. The moment Cody uttered the words, "Fire at Charlie's," Molly's world buckled beneath her. Thoughts of Christina, her stubborn, fiery sister, trapped in a blaze, tore through her composure. Sasha, already on edge from her own mounting worries, stood in stunned silence, barely able to process the fear in Cody's voice. And when Michael learned the news, his heart clenched in terror. As he confided in Sasha, his mind swirled with regret, guilt, and a fury he could hardly contain. He had failed to protect Christina, and now she might be paying the price. The police response was swift. Anna, eyes steely and voice unwavering, ordered her team into motion with a single command: find Sidwell. The timing was too precise, the connections too suspect. Anna wasn't about to let this become another cold case buried under privilege and politics. At the same time, Chase found himself outside Natalia's hotel room, pounding on the door as dread pooled in his gut. Natalia, the volatile woman caught between romance and vendetta, didn't answer. When the door finally gave way, what lay beyond it stopped Chase cold. Natalia, unconscious, her body limp and pale from an apparent overdose. Elsewhere, Marco, caught in his own internal storm of conflicted loyalties, raced through the city after receiving a cryptic message from Natalia. But as he turned a corner near the waterfront, the sight that met him was not a hotel or a woman in distress. It was the billowing smoke of Charlie's pub. The inferno leapt skyward, and screams pierced the chaos. Marco didn't think. Instinct took over. In a stunning twist of fate, Sidwell's son would become the reluctant savior of Sunny's daughter. It was a moment that would rewrite the narratives surrounding both men, one of destruction, the other of redemption. By the time Chase and Anna arrived at the pub, first responders had already subdued the flames. Christina, pulled from the wreckage, was alive, shaken, coughing, but alive. Her rescue offered a momentary reprieve to those waiting with breath held. Alexis, Molly, and Sunny converged in an emotional release of anguish and gratitude. The relief was palpable, but it did little to ease the bitter aftertaste of trauma. Sunny, never one to sit back when his family was threatened, erupted in a storm of fury, certain that Sidwell was behind the fire. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was personal. It was war. Yet amid the tumult, another story began to unravel. Back at Carly's home, Jocelyn tried to maintain a facade of normalcy. But Carly, ever intuitive, saw through her daughter's nervous energy. Questions came quickly. Why was Joss so tense? Why did she look like she'd just stepped out of a crisis? Joss deflected again, her answers rehearsed yet hollow. Carly, unconvinced, watched her daughter retreat further into secrecy. What Carly couldn't know was that Jocelyn had already crossed lines she swore she'd never touch. Her involvement with the WSB, once thrilling, had become a trap of its own, a silent, ever-tightening noose that threatened to choke her before she could escape. Jason, having returned to Port Charles with ghosts of his own, delivered grim news to Sunny. Natalia had never boarded her flight. Her silence was deafening. Whether she had overdosed in despair or been silenced by someone who feared her knowledge, the implications were chilling. But Sunny had no time to mourn what might have happened to Natalia, not when Christina had just escaped death and Sidwell still moved through the city like a phantom, striking when least expected. As Port Charles reeled from the convergence of so many tragedies, arson, overdose, betrayal, its citizens found themselves clinging to fragile bonds and hard truths. Alexis, though momentarily comforted by Christina's survival, refused to let her guard down. She had already buried one daughter. She would not bury another. And Sunny, watching his world smolder with every new attack, steeled himself for a reckoning. There would be no forgiveness. No peace. Because even in a town where secrets are currency and lies form the bedrock of relationships, there are still lines that should never be crossed. And someone had crossed them all. Now the fire was out, but the war had only just begun.